The first camera that we're going to be having a look at today is the traditional camera. Now, this camera is known as being like the most flexible type of camera you can get. And there are two variants that these come in, DSLR and mirrorless. What I have with me here today is the mirrorless type. What's different between the mirrorless and the DSLR cameras is the fact that there is no physical shutter with the sensor, meaning that photos are done quicker, as well as improving the video capabilities for the camera. What makes this form factor, this traditional form factor, better than most modern cameras for a lot of people is the fact that lenses are easily interchangeable. So this metal ring that you can see around, this is where the lenses mount to with these contact pins, allowing for things such as autofocus if the lens supports it. So like here, as you can see, there's the contacts and the rims, so that when this slides on, it locks into place, and if I hold that button there, it will automatically focus for me. The lens that I have on right now is a zoom lens. You can tell by its characteristic length. As you can see, it can go really long. It looks quite cartoonish on this camera actually. What this does is it places a lot of distance between when light first enters and when it reaches the sensor, essentially magnifying the image as it goes through. This one has a range of 75mm up to 300mm. So this means that the images that come out of it will feel very closed in and narrow. This is different to the other lens I have here, as this one, as you can see, is a hell of a lot shorter. It's tiny. This means it's more portable, but also the image coming out of it, it's a lot more open rather than narrow. Right, now that I've gone through some of the lenses that you can get for these type of cameras, let's have a little look at what you can play with. So if I just zoom in real quickly here. Whoa, editor me here. I just missed out a few type of lenses, so let's quickly go through them. That second lens you just saw me put on there is known as a standard lens. They are very versatile, as they can go from as low as 10mm to as high as 45, meaning that they can go really up close as well as have some decent zoom range. Now, if you want to be a rad skateboarder doing some gnarly tricks, you might want to look at a fisheye lens. This was used a lot in the 1980s to get them really close up, extreme angles, which made people look gnarly and sick as they face planted the floor. They typically have a fixed focal range of around 6 to 8mm, which gives it that underwater fisheye effect. Okay, so let's just punch in real quick. We'll flip the display out and we'll turn it on. There we go. We now have a lovely view of what the camera sees. See my hand there. So let's go through some of these settings that we've got here. Just quick get in focus. So these two numbers right here, this is your shutter speed and this is your aperture. The aperture is hello, editor me here again. Just thought I'd come back because this guy did not know what he was on about. Right, apertures. So, the aperture controls the amount of light that is let into the sensor, as well as the amount of depth of field the image will have. So, for example, a high aperture like f2.0, that means quite a lot of light will be let into the sensor, but it also means that it will have a very shallow depth of field, meaning almost nothing is in focus, giving an image that bokeh effect that you can see in a lot of portraits. And vice versa, a very small aperture means not a lot of light is let in, but it also means that almost everything is in focus, meaning that this type of setting is typically used for landscapes. And the shutter speed is Right, I'm back one more time because this guy has not a single clue. So, shutter controls, again, the amount of light that is let into the sensor, but it also controls how fast the shutter opens and closes to let light in. The reason why it's called a shutter speed is because old film cameras would have a physical shutter that would open and close to let light in. Obviously modern cameras don't need this, so it typically just refers to how long the sensor stays on when taking an image. With that little history lesson out the way, low shutter speed means that the sensor is going to be on for a long amount of time. So a shutter speed of 1 means that there's going to be a lot of motion blur, but also a lot of light being let in. Whereas a fast shutter speed means very little motion blur, but less light. Typically, you want to follow the 180-degree rule. So if you have a shutter speed of around 30 frames per second, you'll want your shutter speed to be at 60 frames per second. So that's how them two work. Now if we touch the screen, we can see we've got a few more options here. So we've got ISO, white balance, autofocus mode, aspect ratio, format, and video jargon. So the ISO is the amount of light boosting the camera does. Genuinely, you don't want to have too much ISO because it can make the footage start to look a bit grainy and terrible. I would recommend leaving that about 400 to 600. White balance, best leave that on auto unless you know what you're doing, and I've got some reference point. The white balance makes sure that the white doesn't look too blue or too white. White is in a cooler white. Next up, we've got the autofocus. Best leave that on manual auto. So you can always change it if you want to, but you can also hold down and let the green thing come up. That's it automatically doing it. Best to leave it on both just so you got that flexibility, a bit of help from the camera as well as that bit of artistic control that you can get. Next one is the aspect ratio. So this controls what size the image is at. So you've got 4:3, 16:9, 9:16, and a million other ones, but they're the most common ones. And finally, we have the format. So cameras can either shoot in PNG, JPEG, or in this case, RAW. RAW is much better because JPEG and PNG compress the image down, and what RAW does is it basically keeps all the information, but what's bad about it is that the file sizes are so much bigger, which is the only issue really, but I think the trade-off is worth it. So there you go, we've run through all the camera settings for the traditional camera. I think it's time we look at some more unique ones. So the next camera that we're going to be having a look at is actually the most common one, which is the phone. I am currently filming on an iPhone 16 Pro Max, and while the cameras are great, they could do with a bit of improvement. So what I have here is an ND filter. So what this does is it fixes the limitation with a lot of phone cameras. So as I rotate this dial, you can see less and less of the background. This acts as the aperture for the phone since it can't change it itself, and that's what ND filters are for. It's for when the aperture can't do enough light blocking or there is no variable aperture, which is why you would then use the ND filter. The final camera that we're going to be talking about in this video is the drone. This is the newest type of camera that has come about in recent years. This allows for, quite unique shots up in the sky. As you can see, there is the camera right there, and if I rotate it, you can see how it is gimbalized so that even if I rotate the drone, it locks on. How it does this is it's got a 3-axis gimbal, which means that it is stabilized on this axis, that axis, as well as on this axis. Here is some example footage of what you can capture with the drone. Wow, so cinematic. Whoa, that zoom just then. Wow, so pretty. Oh, I've been there. So it's, most of you probably. So in this next section, we're going to be having a look at the different things that you can attach to your camera. Now, the most common one, which you will see practically everywhere, is the tripod. Now, these things are very handy and practical as they are nice and small. You can expand them like that. You can have them, well, you can't see on the ground, but you can have them quite low on the ground. But also, you can, if I unattach these clips and bring it out like so, just do it to the other ones. Bash, bosh. I now have a camera stand that goes to about my chest height, with me being able to pop this out and rotate, which is quite difficult. This is now as high as me. This makes these very practical, as I showed earlier. The fact they could go from something very small to as tall as me makes them exceptional for flexibility for whatever you want to film, really. You can typically see these a lot in things such as documentaries, film sets, TVs, live broadcasts, almost everywhere. There won't be one set that you don't see which doesn't have at least one of these. Now, these next couple of items I personally do not have, but I will show a 3D visualization of them here. So, the next one that I'm going to show you, which is arguably just as important and popular as the tripod that I just showed you, are gimbals / stabilizers. These are typically made by DJI, such as the DJI Osmo and the DJI Ronin. Now, what these gimbals do is they allow the camera operator to run, walk, and do whatever they want, really, without making the camera shake an incredible amount. Now, most cameras nowadays typically have a form of stabilization, such as in phones, which have optical image stabilization. What this does is it allows the sensor to move a tiny little bit. You know, this is able to cut out a lot of the micro vibrations, which could make old film and phone cameras look horrible and have an incredible amount of motion blur. However, it isn't perfect, since it still allows for larger movements, such as the shaking of the hand, or, you know, when turning round, it doesn't ease in and out of it, making motion like that look choppy and, quite frankly, unwatchable. That's what these gimbals aim to fix. They can gimbalize on both the X, Y, and Z axis, enabling stabilization going that way, and as well as going that way. I know, I'm just letting the render do the show and tell here. Now, this next item, which is used more in film sets and sound stages, is the dolly. These allow to move the cameras on rails, allowing for very strict movement, such as slides, which is what helps the camera achieve them very cinematic rolling shots. This type of attachment is typically used for either establishing shots, where you want to get a nice sweeping angle of everything, or for scripted scenes, where you want the camera to be in the exact same place every time. The final camera attachment, which I'm going to talk about in this section, is the crane. Now, I don't mean a literal crane, but a giant crane which the camera attaches to. This allows for them high up sweeping shots that you can get without having to use a drone. This is typically used for film sets which, you know, can't have drones flying within them, or in sets which have a lot of crowds, as current drone regulations means that you can't fly them over a crowded population of people. Flipping at this thing's massive.